why attendance tells a better story than box office. This is very important. You see people talk about box office, well, adjusted for inflation or whatnot. What's the biggest movie? Prices of tickets are different. Inflation is different. It's one of the few things I believe France does better than anyone. They count admissions, including press. So if they do a press screening of a movie, they can tell you 100 people saw it. They can tell you exactly, because money changes, inflation changes. The only way to really know the influence of a movie is to look at attendance. You can track both. This is from the Matthew Bologna podcast, The Town. Some thoughts on this. I'm going to play this short clip and then we'll discuss it. Here's what they had to say.
Looking at the attendance numbers and how you break down who's going to movies, what demos, where, how much they're paying, et cetera, et cetera. Tell us why the attendance metric is important when you're looking at movies and why it may even be more important than box office.
Yeah, one, attendance is never going to replace box office as a unit of measurement. I'm going to be clear about that. But attendance has its own place. When you think about the entirety of the ecosystem, theatrical historically was the only part of it that was never measuring impressions or eyeballs. Whether it was DVD transactions, it was linear television, it's always measured in impressions or eyeballs. What we're doing in intelligence is translating what's happening in the theater into attendance. And the reason that becomes so important is really for a better understanding of the overall reach of the content, whether it's the film itself, understanding what is the franchise capabilities, whether or not it's the ads that are occurring before the theater. We want to understand how many people are actually seeing those ads. So attendance has a really important place in the ecosystem itself.
Yeah, I find the numbers compelling. Like when Adam Aaron, our friend at AMC, he'll sometimes tweet, 4 million people went and saw this movie in our theaters this week. And that's a pretty impressive stat that you're getting like that many people out of their house into a theater to see a particular title in a weekend. It'd be like if you were look at the Nielsen charts and be like, oh yeah, Stranger Things was delivered $2 billion in revenue to Netflix. Like you don't see those numbers. You see Stranger Things delivered X amount of millions of viewers. And it's worthwhile knowing that number and discussing it for movies.
We want more people going to the theater, right? We of course we want more box office. Box office translates to revenue. Revenue lines the pockets. We appreciate that. But the reality is, in order to grow that, we have to understand how many people are walking through the door.
Yeah. And I think the reality is that Hollywood has focused on box office because that is more manipulable. You can raise prices and the box office will go up. You are subject to inflation and you can compare this year's grosses to grosses from 10 years ago without discussing the fact that inflation has given those prices a big boost and it's kind of not the same. So if you're comparing attendance to attendance from 10 years ago, maybe it's not going to be as flattering.
That's right. And also the formats too, on top of that, right? Well, is there a 3D upcharge? Is there a premium format upcharge? Whatever that may be. How many people are actually going to the theater? That's going to matter to measuring the overall moviegoers.
So what do you think of that? It's one of those things also we deal with being on YouTube. What video of yours got a lot of views? That's how it's transparent. So I just wish the US box office, it's not as sexy as money, but it's interesting to say, what is the movie the most people saw in a year? Is it Obsession? Yeah. It'll be up there. Just thoughts on this video.
It's got to be Obsession because, it doesn't have any of those premium format screens either. When I was at Young Washington, I always liked just stepping into the other theaters, and I stepped into Obsession. I couldn't believe it. I was like, all these people in there. It's like, geez, this movie's been out forever and people are still seeing it. And, I feel like IMAX and 3D, it is so good at just hiding the truth because it's double the price of a normal ticket, right? That's two people, two asses in the seats, according to these metrics that nobody's really taking that seriously.
Yeah, I've always said butts in seats is the most valuable number that a movie theater should be looking at. It's like, are people coming to see your movie? Are people excited about watching this? Because that'll translate into, oh, okay, we're going to get X amount of, home video sales. And we know that this story worked. It's not being inflated because it's, Avatar and everybody wants to watch Avatar and the biggest, PLF screen out there. So, yeah, I always thought that was the better metric of, how a movie is doing is tickets sold. But the market used to be, or the numbers used to be, they used to put that out there, tickets sold. I don't know how accurate it was, but I used to use it on videos.
Well, then
They don't do that anymore.
Great
The
example of
Nielsen-
that is Superman, where if you look at
Right.
Man of Steel, it sold 10 million more tickets.
Yeah.
Obviously, the tickets are much more expensive this day, so it doesn't look. But when you looked, it very clear interest difference and engagement difference.
It's a better way to measure and calculate. I hope Hollywood adopts it. My feeling is they will not, because they can always talk about growth in the industry. What they're really tracking is the growth of inflation. So it's kind of ridiculous. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, if I make a movie, I'm going to show it for free and it'll become the greatest movie ever.
Well,
I
that's
mean,
the
thing about the box office is it is the measure whether the movie succeeded or not in terms of did it make money. You can talk about formats, butts and seats and things like that, but I mean, ultimately, the value of anything in America and in capitalism is what you apply your money to. Supergirl, was this worth the $20 I'm spending on seeing this movie? To me, I think this discussion is just kind of like, again, I could show my movie for $5 and get more butts and seats than anything. Is that a success?
Even James Cameron made that argument. Should you charge the same for movies? Should a Dune Part 3 charge the same money as, say, a small indie movie that was made for far less budget? So those are questions worth asking.
I mean,
indie
indie movies, usually an indie movie splits the box office 50-50 with the theater versus a studio film where studio gets 2/3 of the ticket versus only a third going to the theater. But I think, you can claim, more people saw the movie, but it's really how much money are people shelling out as to whether this is successful or not. Because quite frankly, people are not going to greenlight a movie because more people saw it, but because of how much money it made in the theaters.
Yeah.